Happy New Year, everybody. My voice is kind of shot. Thanks for rolling with that. And welcome to the first 2025 edition of the Bark Tank, presented by Sugardale. I'm Andrew Siciliano. I am back in the home office after the Browns wrapped up a 3-14 season, after the Browns lost on Saturday of Week 18 in Baltimore. I guess I could sit here and unpack that game. I don't know what there really is to unpack. You probably saw some of it on Hard Knocks. I know you sat through it, watching and listening with friends and family, hopefully, on Saturday. It's over. Browns are 3-14. Myles Garrett made a great play. First play of the game. Nailed Derrick Henry in the backfield. Jerry Jeudy set a new Browns single-season record with 90 receptions. Good for Jerry. Good for Bailey Zappi to get back out there. I know he'd like to pick six back, but he made some throws. Jordan Akins got involved. I hate to see the Mike Hall injury, but he was playing great. Look, there are plenty of positives to take from the entire season. You now have to take those positives and build towards next season. Happy to tell you that coming up in a couple of minutes, Andrew Berry, the general manager of the Cleveland Browns, who is a first-round pick for the first time in a while, is going to be here in the Bark Tank. Get some stuff from him. AB coming up momentarily. The one thing I will say about the game, coldest I've been in a very long time at a game and on the field. You might have seen on Hard Knocks, Myles say, hey, I need to warm my feet up. It's that cold. It was 11 degrees with a wind chill on the field. I've been to a lot of cold games, a lot of cold stadiums, stood on a lot of cold fields. That was one of the top five. I know 11 degrees, you go, oh, there have been games that have been colder. The Saints game in Cleveland a couple of years ago, yeah, I get it. But this one was bad. That wind just bit into you. It took my gloves off. Nathan and I down to the field before the game took my gloves off to take a photo. Even 30 seconds, you put your glove back on, your glove no longer did its job. Your hand was freezing under the glove. So the players that actually had to go through that, tip of the cap to you. Players, coaches, everybody on the sideline. First game I've seen, and we have the windows open in the booth. Nathan had hand warmers, right? The hand warmers you shake and then you make fists with. He had those in his hands calling the game. So tip of the cap to him. Anyway, just a quick thought on the season. I've said this the last two games, week 17 and 18, the loss to the Dolphins and then the loss to the Ravens. Not only gratitude to the organization, but most importantly, gratitude to you, the fan. I kind of got choked up saying goodbye at the end of the game in Baltimore, just because the entirety of the season kind of came crashing down. The entirety of this ride that I've been on, the entirety of stepping into a job under horrible and unfortunate and just circumstances that I still have a hard time talking about, with Jim retiring and then obviously Jim's passing. It all kind of hit me after that game on Sunday as we were signing off. I'm going to look at the camera when I say this. I often, just full disclosure here, when I'm trying to find words, I kind of look up into the corner, and that goes for personal conversations as well. But this needs eye contact here. Thank you, everybody, like fans. Thank you for not only sticking with the team, but on a personal level, sticking with me and with Nathan and with us and with the entire Browns content team. It sucks for us too. When I mean that, meaning we're all in this together rooting. Like, we live the emotional roller coaster that you do. It's not just a job. So many of the people in the building, born and raised Browns fans. And we feel it like you feel it. Thank you for sticking with us. And on a personal level, I've said it before, I'll say it again a lot. Thank you for sticking with me. I've had good games, bad games, good calls, bad calls. Thank you, because it means a lot. I can't really put it into words what it means. We've had amazing moments. Like, I'll never forget that. The first game, sure. Was able to do the 3 games last year, won all 3. got lucky. I'll never forget, obviously, Jake Moody missed the kick last year. That emotion, like that plane ride. I don't know that I've ever told this story. I got emotional flying home, flying after that game. Browns won, huge win. You guys remember where you were, obviously, for that game. Huge win. I got emotional. Like, wow. Like, I did this and they won. Like, awesome. Week 1, same thing this year. That win in Jacksonville week 2, you're like, all right, like we got something. Like, because I'm always the game day optimist. I've told you that. Obviously, 3-14, not what anyone expected. But we will always have Jameis and Cedric Tillman against the Ravens. We will always have the snow globe. And if there's any positive from this year, you have those NFL Films moments, and you have those moments where, look, you're going to remember where you were for him. And I know I will. And I am honored to be part of those moments. And I am beyond grateful to you, the fan, for including me in those moments and embracing me the way you guys all have this year. Anyway, now that I got that off my chest, time to look ahead to the offseason. This is kind of cool. We have 2 Andrews here. His very first appearance in the Bark Tank, general manager of the Cleveland Browns, Andrew Berry.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.
Jameis barked when he joined the Bark Tank. You're not going to bark.
No, you know what? That's Jameis is a very unique personality. I'm gonna leave all the barking to him and our dog pound faithful.
Fair. He was great, by the way, with the bark. Kind of caught me off guard, and I didn't know where to go from there. But let's start with you, if we could, with your end of season presser on Monday. Kevin went Sunday, and then you went on Monday. I thought it was interesting that you opened kind of almost by bearing your soul, if you will, a little bit. And you used the word, Andrew, right out of the gate, embarrassed. Mm-hmm. Why?
I think it's the reality of, coming into a season where we felt like we had a good team. We felt like we could build off of some of the success that we had in 2023. And for us to completely, just being candid, fall flat on our face. It's just something that when you fail that spectacularly in a very public arena, it's just something that it's hard to reconcile, and it's hard to live with week to week, especially in a situation where, we're really stewards of a public asset, right? There are so many people in Northeast Ohio who, bleed brown and orange. The Cleveland Browns are about how they grow up, how they, how intricate role in their daily lives. And I think there's just a sense of disappointment and embarrassment that we let those people down this year. And we're resigned to correcting that as we move forward.
How do you, and I know the off season is, as we sit here taping this, 5 days old. You used the word reconcile just now. How do you reconcile everything?
Yeah, I think the reality of it is, unfortunately, in professional sports, sometimes these years do happen. You'd like to think that your team will perform up to expectations, be young and in its prime, in perpetuity, and that's not the reality of professional sports. But for us not to be able to stop the fall or stop the bleeding, so to speak, over the course of the year, that's a major problem, and it starts by hard self-analysis with, the roster and really everything that we did to prepare the team, and then ultimately make the necessary adjustments, which it's not just players, it's not just coaches, not just support staff. It's, auditing everything we do from a process standpoint, and adjust those when the results haven't been satisfactory. And that doesn't mean that we don't have a number of good things in place in those areas. And also, making sure that we're not letting the emotion of the season, kind of throw out the baby with the bathwater. But, it would be naive for us not to look at this year and say, hey, this went, really, really wrong. And we need to change our approach in some areas to correct it.
Andrew, I'll timestamp this. We're doing this Thursday afternoon. Your presser was Monday. As we sit here right now, do you have any other update on Deshaun Watson and his setback, as you put it?
Do not. We will certainly communicate with our fans and organizational stakeholders when we do. We're still working through that, but when we do, we will have something to say.
All right. Is there any hope, thought, possibility that he could play in 2025?
It's really too early to say, Andrew. One thing that I have learned with these long-term injuries is even when you expect players to progress with an appropriate timeline, that recovery can be highly variable. So it would even really be too early to predict at this point, even if we did have the full evaluation. But obviously our concern is with a more extended recovery than we thought a couple months ago.
And this came out of the blue Sunday.
Yeah, this is something that we just learned about on Sunday. It's not something. It's something that we picked up on the exit physical. So we're still working through it.
All right, you said, and obviously I think everyone knows now, considering what we just discussed here, you're going to have to remake the quarterback room.
Mm-hmm.
The general consensus is veteran who could potentially start if needed, and draft one as well. Is that a fair working plan, a thesis, as we sit here 3 months out?
Yeah, Andrew, I think it's too early to say. We won't restrict ourselves in terms of the avenues that we would explore at the position, but we also want to make sure that we're convicted on whatever players that we bring into that room. We won't force anything in any arena, but we'll be broad in terms of how we think about the position.
Philosophically, Andrew, when it comes to the draft, there are some that just say, with a quarterback, for example, hey, I don't care where we're picking, whomever we is, whatever organization this is. If I believe in the guy, hand in the card. Like I remember the Daniel Jones conversation years ago. Daniel Jones, Dexter Lawrence. You took the quarterback too high. Who cares? If you think he's the guy, hand in the card. Are you one of those guys?
Yeah, I don't know that it's either or, Andrew. I think they're, like, generally speaking, if you think you have a player where you can consistently develop above average offense around that individual's skill sets, regardless of whether they're a pocket passer, an out of structure playmaker, a runner, whatever that ends up being. If you feel like you can build an offense and put together a scheme that maximizes that player's ability, which would allow you to have above average offense, I think it makes sense to take the player. Now there are value considerations that come into it. For me, whether it's a couple spots versus let's say several rounds, that's a big difference. But would I personally get caught up on a player if it's like, okay, hey, he may be the, I don't know, 10th best player in the draft, and it's like, okay, does that mean you have to take him at 10? No, I don't believe that's the case. Just because the impact of the position is so great.
The first round's so interesting. The Thursday night of the first round, for those of us sitting on the couch watching, it's hard to describe what's that like as a fan, because we all think, or those in the media, we all think that we know how the board should fall.
Mm-hmm.
The last 3 years, obviously you're in the draft room, you're on the phone, you're thinking, maybe can we get up potentially, maybe someone's going to call us, whatever. But have you, this might sound odd, learned anything about the first round? Like, are there lessons that maybe you've taken by watching the last 3 years without a pick?
I wouldn't say so, Andrew, that there's anything that we've learned because we haven't had a pick, because, part of it is, like for every team that's on the clock in the first round, there's a lot of action that doesn't actually hit the surface, because there are a number of calls or discussions that happen when you're within a couple, picks of your slot, that you may not take, you may not act on something that, and that never necessarily hits like the public arena. So there are all those experiences that happen when you have a pick in the first round that you can learn from, that you can take from, regardless of if you ended up, trading down, or sitting and picking. I think that you have seen a bit of a shift in terms of some of the positional value across the league. Particularly like at the receiver position. There was a year, probably in 2019 and 2020, where you had a number of guys that you'd have access to in late one, or even late two, that were excellent players. Like I think about, in 2019, you had guys like DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin that year, AJ Brown, who, went in the middle of the second round or later. And now, like with the impact that position has had in our game, you've seen it, despite the demand of the receiver position, you see those guys got a lot earlier now. So you do see trends like that, as you sit back and observe. But I would say it's less about not being in the action, and probably just more about seeing how the league shifts and evolves, over the last 3 to 5 years.
Not to get too far down this rabbit hole here, but isn't some of that with the wide receiver contract based? Really, the top of the market now is 35, and likely above whomever hits the jackpot on the next one. And if you can lock in 5 years in the first round, or 4 in the second, and that market is exploding on second contracts, why not lock in that contract?
No, that's absolutely right. I mean, if you think about it, even when we traded for, Amari, in 2022, the top of the market was barely above 20. Now that's a $35 million position and climbing. We'll see that whenever Jamar Chase gets his extension done in the next year. And, those economic realities have certainly influence the trends that you see in the draft.
All right. Offensive realities here. Mike Bloomgren, new offensive line coach, former head coach at Rice. But if you go back to his days in Palo Alto, they ran the football a lot. I mean, are we going to see power 15, 18 times in a row? And if so, is that maybe a hint as to where Kevin's OC hire might land?
It's a great question, Andrew. I don't think you'll see the days where we're running power 15, 18 times in a row. But we think Mike is a fantastic O-line coach, run game and pass game. Mike, he actually started his career under Bill Callahan with the Jets as a QC. Went to Stanford, was David Shaw's one of his very first hires. Implemented a lot of new things, both from a protection standpoint and a run game standpoint in Palo Alto with those great teams. One of the few like O-line coaches who's like parlayed that into a head coaching position, which he did at Rice. Made them bowl eligible for like the first time in forever. He's really smart, great relationship builder. High IQ in terms of technique and fundamentals, and we think he'll be able to make a huge impact both run and pass game.
And that came pretty quickly. I think it surprised a lot of people how quickly, Kevin made that hire. Can we expect an OC hire in anytime soon?
For hopefully, but we'll work through the process that we have in the processes that we have in place. Once we feel good about a candidate and feel good about a direction, we'll make that decision as quickly as possible. But if it does have to take time, that's okay, because we want to make sure that we get, the hire right first and foremost. And with all these different positions, sometimes they happen at during different time frames.
Speaking of process, what are your next 3 months going to be like?
Yeah, so the next 3 months are we're pretty similar, because we really do go into the off season as if we have an expansion team. So the next several weeks are really auditing, what we do internally, really almost doing an autopsy of the season. Obviously, heavily involved in hiring different positions with the coaching staff and football operations. We'll be in full attendance to the major all-star games. We'll go in the draft meetings, combine, free agency planning. It'll be a busy spring. And, once the start of the league year opens, we'll have a plan in place with vets and, eventually transition into full-time draft planning. But, we'll be ready to go, once we're able to add, players to the roster.
Sunday was exit interviews, and obviously there's a lot going on. Were you, like a lot of fans, keeping an eye on the Patriots and Titans results? And if so, what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat and say, yeah, we were. After our season was done, like I said, I hate how we got here, but one of the silver linings is that it can put you in a position to have a great impact on the team with however you use a really rare and valuable asset. Obviously our primary focus was on our players. But once I got through my exit interviews, as I was working, I did have an eye toward those games, because it does have a positive impact for us as we enter the offseason.
Does that involve like screaming and yelling at the TV, or are you a passive viewer?
I'm a pretty quiet and laid back watcher. It's more observational than emotional.
Andrew, the next 3 months are going to be fascinating. Look forward to seeing you on the road, on the path to the draft, as we used to say.
Yeah.
I hope you get 5 minutes at one point to have a break and catch your breath in the off season. And again, thanks for doing this.
Appreciate you, Andrew. See you at the Senior Bowl.
The Bark Tank is going on the road. The Bark Tank is going to the Senior Bowl. So take a breath. Enjoy CBD with Nathan and Bo every day on ClevelandBrowns.com, or the Browns YouTube page, all the social channels. And I will see you for not one, but multiple shows in Mobile, Alabama, the week of the conference championship games. We will be down there as college football's best seniors and some underclassmen now get one final showcase. If you've never really paid attention to the Senior Bowl, it is awesome. You get the best of the best competing against each other. It's great. You get a running back from a group of 5 school going up against a defensive lineman from the Big Ten or the SEC. You get O linemen from this conference against D linemen. You get one-on-ones. It's awesome content. Every coach, every GM is there. Again, I'll say it. Every coach, every GM is there. And over the years, it's been Baker Mayfield and Josh Allen and Dak Prescott and Justin Herbert and Jalen Hurts. You name it, they've gone through the Senior Bowl. We're going to have those guys. We're going to have that group on the Bark Tank. So, until then, stay safe, everybody. And we'll see you in Mobile. This has been the Bark Tank presented by Sugardale. My name is Andrew Siciliano. So long.